Welcome, Kingdom Treasures family. Have you ever wondered why two extraordinary figures from the Bible, Enoch and Elijah, were taken to heaven without experiencing death? Today, we're diving deep into this fascinating topic to uncover the mystery of immortality. First, let's talk about Enoch. Enoch, a righteous man with a serene demeanor, often wore simple, traditional biblical robes made of woven cloth, symbolizing his close walk with God. Enoch lived during a pivotal time leading up to the Great Flood. He is noted for his righteous life and is famously known as the father of Methuselah, who holds the record for the longest lifespan in the Bible. In Genesis 5:24 it states, "Enoch walked with God, then he was no more, because God took him." Next we have Elijah, a prophet during the 9th century BC. Elijah, a fiery prophet with a commanding presence, typically dressed in a rough biblical mantle and leather belt, reflecting his zealous faith and miraculous life. Elijah was a fearless opponent of idol worship in Israel, particularly against Jezebel and King Ahab. His life was marked by miraculous events, but perhaps none as dramatic as his ascension to heaven. According to 2 Kings 2:11, Elijah was taken up in a whirlwind while being escorted by a chariot of fire. Both Enoch and Elijah's stories defy the natural order of life and death as we know it. Their ascensions challenge our understanding and prompt deep theological questions. How could they escape death when the Bible states that death is an inevitable consequence of sin? The account of Enoch is found in Genesis 5:24, which states, "And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him." This brief mention leaves much to the imagination and has intrigued theologians and biblical scholars for centuries. Elijah's narrative offers more detail and drama found in 2 Kings 2:11, where it describes Elijah being taken up to heaven in a whirlwind by a chariot of fire. Elijah, one of the most significant prophets in Israelite history, had a ministry marked by miracles and confrontations with kings. Both of these enigmatic figures challenge our conventional understanding of mortality and the doctrinal teachings surrounding death and sin. The Apostle Paul addresses some of these questions in Hebrews 11:5, where he writes, "By faith Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death." Enoch's life stands out for his close relationship with God. Unlike many others in his time, Enoch lived righteously and walked faithfully with God. This unique relationship set him apart, leading to his extraordinary departure from this world. Scholars have debated whether his long lifespan should be taken literally or symbolically, but one thing remains clear. Enoch's life was a testament to unwavering faith. Elijah's ascension is one of the most dramatic events recorded in the Bible. His life was filled with miracles, from calling down fire from heaven to raising the dead. Yet it is his departure that captures our imagination. As described in 2 Kings 2:11, Elijah was taken up to heaven in a whirlwind, accompanied by a chariot of fire. This vivid imagery has led many to ponder its significance and what it reveals about God's power and purpose. The accounts of Enoch and Elijah's ascensions have sparked numerous debates among scholars. Some argue that these stories are symbolic rather than literal events. However, others contend that their literal interpretations do not contradict biblical doctrine, but rather highlight God's sovereignty and grace. By examining these differing viewpoints, we can gain a richer understanding of these extraordinary events. Scholars who view these accounts as symbolic often interpret Enoch and Elijah's ascensions as metaphors for spiritual elevation or divine favor. They suggest that these narratives serve to teach moral lessons or convey deeper theological truths about faith, obedience, and God's interaction with humanity. This perspective aligns with the literary and allegorical interpretations common in many ancient texts, where such ascensions are seen as representative of a person's closeness to the divine. On the other hand, proponents of the literal interpretation argue that there is no basis to dismiss the historical reality of Enoch and Elijah's ascensions. They cite scriptural consistency and God's omnipotence as key factors supporting a literal understanding. From this viewpoint, these miraculous events are seen as evidence of God's direct intervention in human affairs, reaffirming his ultimate authority and the possibility of divine exception. To fully appreciate their stories, it's essential to consider them within their historical contexts. Enoch lived in a world increasingly corrupt before the flood, while Elijah served as a beacon of faith during a time when Israel grappled with idolatry. Both men stood firm in their devotion to God despite their challenging circumstances, making their stories even more compelling. The ascensions of Enoch and Elijah are powerful demonstrations of God's sovereignty and grace. They were taken up by God's will, not due to any secret knowledge or flawlessness on their part. This reveals that God's plans transcend human understanding, and that His grace can intervene in extraordinary ways. The ascensions of Enoch and Elijah serve as compelling displays of God's authority and grace. Enoch, a righteous man with a serene demeanor, often wore simple, traditional biblical robes made of woven cloth, symbolizing his close walk with God. Elijah, a fiery prophet with a commanding presence, typically dressed in a rough biblical mantle and leather belt. They were taken up by God's decision, not because of any hidden knowledge or their own perfection. This illustrates that God's plans go beyond human comprehension, and that His grace can act in miraculous ways. Their ascensions also serve as foreshadowing for future events described in the New Testament. In 1 Corinthians 15:51-52, it speaks about the transformation of believers at the second coming of Christ. Just as Enoch and Elijah were taken up without experiencing death, some believers will be alive and transformed when Christ returns. The ascensions of Enoch and Elijah are not merely historical anecdotes, but carry profound theological implications. They exemplify God's sovereignty over life and death, demonstrating that He alone has the authority to transcend natural laws. These remarkable occurrences also serve as a testament to the faith and righteousness of Enoch and Elijah, marking them as extraordinary individuals who walked closely with God. Furthermore, the anticipation of a similar transformation at Christ's return instills hope in many believers. It reinforces the concept of eternal life and assures Christians that, just as God took Enoch and Elijah up to heaven, He will fulfill His promise to transform and glorify those who remain faithful. This promise is a cornerstone of Christian eschatology, providing a vision of a future where physical death is not the end, but a transition to a new eternal existence in the presence of God. For believers today, the stories of Enoch and Elijah offer profound spiritual lessons. They remind us that living a righteous life matters deeply to God, and that His plans for us can surpass our wildest imaginations. Their stories encourage us to stay faithful, knowing that God's grace is always at work. Ultimately, Enoch and Elijah's experiences stand as testaments to faith and righteousness. Their lives show us that walking closely with God can lead to extraordinary outcomes. They inspire us to deepen our faith and trust in God's divine plan for our lives. So what can you do now? Here are some steps you can take. If you found this exploration into the lives of Enoch and Elijah enlightening, make sure to subscribe to Kingdom Treasures for more biblical insights like this one. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on our deep dives into fascinating biblical topics. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about Enoch and Elijah's ascensions? Do you see them as literal events or symbolic stories? Join the discussion in the comments below. Your insights could help others grow in their faith. Finally, if this video inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your friends, family, or anyone who could benefit from these powerful biblical lessons. Let's spread the message far and wide. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through time and faith. Remember, just like Enoch and Elijah, each one of us can walk closely with God and experience His amazing grace. Until next time, stay blessed.